second week that I've been doing this show live, and I'm very proud of myself. For those of you who don't know that 52 weeks equals a year, um, I'm very pleased and proud of myself that I've been able to stick with it and be able to do it. And hopefully in 2012 we will find employment. That way we won't have to. I will still keep doing the show because I love doing talking sports. But we're hopeful that 2012, the sky's the limit, and we appreciate all the American Radio Network has done for us in giving us this format and opportunity to do shows like this. And so, today's show, we're going to talk about the good. We will do it without music. I was going to break out some Christmas music, but unfortunately, just couldn't get it done. So, without any further ado, obviously the breaking news of the week is that the NBA is back starting Sunday. We've seen this week already some preseason basketball games where a lot of people are making big deals about certain teams and possibly how these teams could actually be teams to watch for the rest of the season. And some point during this good section, we will preview the top teams in the league. And in the bad section, we'll preview the teams that are almost as good. And in the ugly section, we'll just talk about the teams that could be contracted in the next couple of years. As I do each week, whenever there's a Thursday night football game, I like to talk about the game that played the night before. Last night, the Indianapolis Colts absolutely stunned, absolutely showed professionalism, absolutely did everything they were supposed to do as a professional athlete in defeating the Houston Texans in a game that absolutely meant more to the Texans than it did to the Colts. I could not believe what I was watching. 19-16 was the final score for those who don't know. Usually when you have a running back run for 150 yards, you're in control of the game, and you usually are able to use him to control the clock and control the final 2 minutes of a game. And unfortunately, Houston made that field goal. There was a lot of time on the clock. Yes, the referees helped with some of the worst calls maybe in the history of the National Football League. I'm still stunned about that roughing the passer call. A guy tackles a guy by his ankles, and he gets called for roughing the passer, which absolutely made no sense, which kept a drive alive. Yes, the pass interference calls were legit, but that roughing the passer call gave them great yardage and thus allowed the Colts to steal a victory. And we'll talk about the Colts in a minute in my good section because they deserve to be talked about. But the bottom line for the Houston Texans, yes, you won your first division, and we're proud of you for doing that. You were supposed to because Peyton didn't play this year. But you weren't supposed to play this poorly in a big spot 2 weeks in a row now. You've lost games, and essentially you've put yourself in a situation where most people think that you're going to be one and done. And I don't understand what in the world you guys are thinking, putting up an effort like that. Yes, I know you're using your third string quarterback, but there's no excuse for allowing that team using its third quarterback, or actually fourth quarterback this year, with limited offense. Yes, they still have Reggie Wayne, and he had a 100-yard game, but I don't understand what in the world your defense was thinking last night. So, unfortunately, a lot of people feel that you're going to be the first team out, and I don't disagree. A couple quick NFL notes. The MVP voting, a lot of people have already given the award to Aaron Rodgers. Well, as Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friends. Personally, Drew Brees, deserves a lot of votes this year for being the league MVP. I mean, basically, the guy is 305 yards away from surpassing Dan Marino's record for yardage in a season. His team is in first place. And basically, He's had as much of an impact this season um, as any quarterback and any player in the league has. Now, yes, there are about four players who I think deserve to be mentioned in that MVP race. Of course, I'm referring to um, Tom Brady. I'm referring to Aaron Rodgers, of course, and I'm also referring to Mr. Foster from the Texans. And personally, I don't understand. We all get it why Rodgers was obviously the choice because his team was unbeaten. His team was playing great football. But Breeze is putting up numbers that we haven't seen, and Brady is putting up numbers we haven't seen as well. I mean, obviously, the first game of the season, Brady threw for 517 yards and set the tone that this was going to be an offensive year in the National Football League. But the MVP race is pretty close. Another team I want to talk about quickly is the 49ers, which I'll be talking about in a second. I might as well do it right now. The 49ers, in my opinion, are the only team in football that plays defense. A lot of other teams pretend to play defense. A lot of the teams are disappointing in how they don't seem to bring the same intensity each week. But for my money, I wish the 49ers had one player on their defense that we can nominate to be in the MVP category for whether Defensive Player of the Year or League MVP. Because the offense, yeah, it's good some weeks it's anemic, but the bottom line is that defense is playing great every week. And even though they've had games this year where quarterbacks have hit them for over 300 yards, the Cowboys did it, the Giants did it. You know, Flacco had a pretty good game against them. But the bottom line is even Roethlisberger threw for 300 yards in the last game on Monday. The bottom line is their defense does not beat themselves. The defense turns the ball over, and they are the only team in football really that plays true NFL defense. So you got to give them their respect and their props. And they're going to be a tough team to knock out, especially at home. They don't let you score touchdowns running the football. They have an NFL record streak of 14 games from the start of the season, not allowing a rushing touchdown. So this team is loaded for bear. We'll finish our NFL discussion quickly here with the top three teams last week. Obviously, I've talked about the Colts. The reason why I'm giving the Colts this much love is because basically all season long, everyone's criticized the Colts. I'm a bit puzzled by the Colts just because their defense should have played much better than it has this season. I mean, they have too many good players on that defensive line to allow quarterbacks to stand back there and throw the ball all over them. Their secondary last night was hitting everybody. They just played sound defense. And the last 2 weeks, getting their 2 victories, they deserve to be acknowledged for what they've done. The Chargers are doing it again. The Chargers, do this every season where they basically stink for a good portion of it and then all of a sudden get hot. And usually it's due to the fact that a lot of their players are hurt. Well, their players are coming back, and the Chargers are playing smart, sound football. And this weekend against the Lions, if the Chargers can catch a break by the Broncos losing up in Buffalo, the Chargers could actually put themselves in a position where next week's games could be a winner-take-all, as the Chargers will play the Raiders next week, and the Broncos will play the Chiefs. But they got to beat the Lions. It's not going to be easy. The Lions are trying to become the first Lion team since 1999 to get into the postseason. And so they're going to do whatever they can because the following week for the Lions is the Packers. And the Packers are going to play it out just because they want to make sure they have home field advantage throughout. And they really need the work, especially with all the injuries now apparently happening to their offensive line. But again, when the Chargers have all its players, they're tough to stop. And they'll be playing indoors. I mean, get ready for a shootout tomorrow, folks. Both receivers and Gates and the running backs. But Stafford and Johnson and his crew batten down the hatches. And, of course, I just talked about them a second ago. The Niners, the Niners deserve a lot of love. I mean, I was shocked that they beat the Giants when they did, but they got it done. And they're doing it every week. Losing to Baltimore in the manner in which they did showed that they're going to play tough games, and the referee's call actually dictated that game. Beating the Steelers up on Monday night in front of a live national audience, that opened everybody's eyes, and it lets you think if you can drive the ball 20-20 on them, they're happy with that, but they're not going to let you get the last 20 yards by running it. You're going to have to score touchdowns from beyond the red zone to beat that team. And yes, the Packers, yes, the Saints, yes, the Falcons, yes, the Cowboys have receivers that can stretch the field. This team is not afraid. The Niners are okay with that. But you got to get into the end zone. And the Niners' obvious weakness, obviously, is that they don't get into the end zone. They kick way too many field goals. I mean, David Akers has set a team record for most field goals by a kicker. I think he's got 40 field goals that he's made, and he's taken like 44 attempts or something like that, which is, we all know the Niners as a team that scored touchdowns. I mean, I'm sure Ray Wersching back in the day didn't kick the ball 40 times other than extra points. So, huge kudos to them for, having the season that they've had and doing the things that they have done. And we'll be back on 89.7 KLAS FM to talk about the NBA. You can also call on the show by calling us at 323-962-1937. And if you're sitting with your cell phone somewhere and you want to listen to me on your cell phone, you can by dialing 461-6676 with a 323 area code. And we'll be back after this message from my favorite company in the whole wide